Welcome to the Full of Tracy Money Audio Commentary. This is Owen Tracy recording. It's 3:15 p.m. That is Central Time. Today is January 12th. Well, today we had quite a bit of a wobble on Wall Street and then it closed in positive territory. And I think a lot of that had to do with what's happening on the political front. And what I was thinking more about today really is about governance and the standards of governance. And one of the points I made in Crowd Money when I was writing it is that the standards of governance are not a fixed number. We're not talking about a platonic ideal here. What we're talking about is the trajectory. Now, one thing that's clear is that the standards of governance are deteriorating in several of the more developed countries. And we might argue that the standards of governance are improving in some of the emerging markets. Now, the challenge, of course, with looking at standards of governance is that every country can really only be compared to itself. And if the standards of governance today are worse than they were 5 years ago, well, then we can conclude that the standards of governance are deteriorating. And then we make a judgment call on whether that is likely to change, whether it's likely to deteriorate even further, or it's likely to get better. Then we can also look at another country and say, well, is it better than it was before? Yes, it is. Is that likely to persist? Then, if that's the case, well, the chances are that asset markets will reflect that. And the way that we look at governance is to look at property rights. Because as an investor, it's not quite the same as living in the country. It's not quite the same as thinking about it politically or militarily. But simply as an investor, are you more likely to make money in a place that has property rights and respects them, or one that doesn't? And of course, then what are the kinds of things that support property rights? Well, an independent judiciary. That means that if someone tries to take your property, you can go to the court and you can argue about it. That's usually something that you can do where you have an independent judiciary, because there's not going to be a political fight about whether you should get your rights upheld. But then what you also need is a free press. You need the check on power. You need an independent, free press so that they can speak truth to power, that they can reflect the interests of the population, that they can tell stories about what is in fact going on, and that they can highlight corruption. That's the kind of thing that everybody wants to read about. But and of course, then what it also means is that if you do take your case to court and it turns out to be something that is unjust, well, then you could rely on a free press to help to highlight it. That's not exactly how things tend to work, but that's relatively close to how you would anticipate things working. And of course, when you have I guess a piece of time like we have right now, where